Welcome back to the Dutchman's Den. I'm JT the Dusty Dutchman, and I think I'm finally ready to give you my initial thoughts on my very first titanium bike ever, the Bearclaw Thunderhawk. So if you're looking for some scientific, data-driven review, this ain't it. These are just my initial thoughts and opinions, backed up by about 30 years of riding all different kind of bicycles, none of which were titanium. But it'll be fun. Come on. Won't you be my neighbor? This is my 10-year-old or so carbon road bike, which makes it fast and light. It's also got the world's skinniest tires. And this is my really old Raleigh. In fact, it was my dad's old bike, but it makes it vintage, old school, and just cool. And it only weighs about 85 pounds. This one is my Fixation East Side, and it's got a steel frame, which makes the ride quality very, very nice. The seating position, not so much. This is what's left of my Niner, RLT9, and this was one of the most versatile bikes I've ever had. You can put all kinds of different wheel and tire combos on this thing. It also is way too small. And this is my Redline hardtail mountain bike. And on easy to moderately technical trails, this is my favorite bike. Why do I have so many single speeds? So what am I getting at here? Well, all of my favorite parts of every one of these bicycles lives inside the Thunderhawk. But does that make this bike perfect? Not exactly. So let's dig in and talk about its fit, form, and function. All right, first, let's talk about how this bike fits. So I'm 6 feet tall and about 190-ish pounds, and this is a frame size 57. So thanks to Dustin at Bearclaw for helping me finally get a bike that actually fits. So because all the frame sizes I've had up to this point have been too small, in order to get the reach that I need to be comfortable, I've had to use a setback seat post and then push the seat back as far as I possibly can. Now with the correct frame size, I can run a straight seat post and my body gets shifted forward on the bike where it's supposed to be, farther over the pedals, giving me a more powerful, comfortable seating position. I will say that this new seating orientation did feel odd at first, but I'm definitely getting used to it pretty quickly. Well, next, let's talk form, and oh, what a form it is. Nothing else looks like titanium. It's got a very distinct look, and I absolutely love it. Other than that, there's a few other things that I found odd. First of all, there's no bolts up on the top tube here for a top tube bag, which surprised me on a modern bike. The other thing that I thought was odd on a modern bike is that the front fork did not have an internally routed brake cable. But the more I thought about it, I'm probably better off because I plan to swap out this fork and try a couple different other forks. And now I don't have to disconnect the brake line and re-bleed the brakes every time. My heel hits this part of the chainstay quite a bit, but I've had that problem with multiple bikes, so I think that might be on me. And the other thing which is extremely odd is I struggle so hard to get this rear wheel on, and I can't explain it. Go in. No, you just go in. Another issue I had is I was so impressed by the designed by Chet axles that I failed to realize that they were 12 millimeter, not 15 millimeter like my last two gravel bikes. Luckily, before the first ride, I did realize that the hub and axles did not match, so I had to wait 2 more days, spend $50 more to get the correct hub cups before I could ride it. My biggest relief after riding it for the first time was finding out that the internally routed cables in the down tube don't make any sound. They don't rattle around, like, at all. And we're gonna talk more about that. And lastly, function. The part we've all been waiting for. How does it ride? So way before I ever owned a titanium bike, I did a lot of reading about the ride characteristics of titanium. But now that I've ridden one for myself, I've found 2 things that I expected and 2 things that definitely surprised me. The first thing I expected is for this bike to basically weigh about the same as my Niner, which it did. And the Thunderhawk is only about 7/10 of a pound lighter than my Niner, and it basically rides like a 20 to 21 pound bike. Next thing I found that I expected was that the titanium frame would have similar compliance to like a steel frame, meaning its flexibility. I've spent many years riding steel frame mountain bikes and road bikes, so I have quite a bit of experience in the nuances of the way a steel bike rides. And I'm happy to report that this frame has some of the same ride quality characteristics as steel, but without the weight penalty. But there's more, and that's where the surprises start. Now, if you can build a bike, take it on its first ride, and there's no clicks, creaks, squeaks, or rattles, that's a win. But based on this sound, I expected a few. But to my surprise, there were none. Well, except for the rear hub. No matter what surface you're riding on, this bike is so quiet, it blurs the lines between what you can hear and feel. Like, I can hear that it's very quiet, but I can also feel how quiet this bike is, which I know doesn't exactly make sense. And then after progressing through some different types of terrain, I found myself on dirt and some mountain bike trails. And to my surprise again, even with 700 by 38 slightly knobby tires, I felt as confident and comfortable on this bike as I would with my steel hardtail mountain bike, which again, doesn't exactly make sense. So I've heard more than a few times that there's something about riding a titanium bike that is hard to put into words. There's unquantifiable characteristics. And I agree, it's the best fitting, the best looking, the best riding road bike I've ever had. But there's something else. There's a little bit of an X factor, something that's hard to put your finger on. I think the best way I can try to describe it is if I sat down to a meal that I cooked, it would probably taste fine. But if I sat down to the same exact meal, but my mom cooked it, it would taste so much better. And I can't exactly tell you why. So I guess that means the Bearclaw Thunderhawk is Ma's cooking, and I'm hungry. Well, I think that wraps up the initial review. A lot more miles and a lot more videos to come about the Thunderhawk, so stay tuned for that. But until then, don't forget to get outside, get on your bike, because good things will happen. Oh, and if you haven't seen the build video, I'll put that over here somewhere for you to check out. But if you scare easy, make sure you skip the intro, because it's a bit spooky.